Few substances are considered as harmful and verified as salt nowadays. We've all heard that salt consumption is detrimental to our health. So, in this video, we're going to see why sodium is essential for the proper functioning of our body, our muscles, and our neurons. What does scientific evidence say about salt? And what is the impact of following a low-sodium diet? Historically, salt and sodium have always been of great importance in human life. Since the Roman Empire, soldiers patrolling the Roman roads received their salary in salt. And in Greece, slaves were exchanged for salt. In fact, ancient humans consumed much more salt than people today. In 16th century Europe, the consumption of fish or meats preserved in salt could cause an average person to consume more than 10 times the current amount of sodium. But in much more recent times, between the two world wars, sodium consumption still exceeded 10 grams per day, and we associated high sodium levels with hypertension. However, today, we have 3 times more people with hypertension despite consuming sodium several times less. Why? And why, if sodium causes hypertension, does this percentage of hypertensive people increase, even though the average sodium consumption remains the same in recent years? To understand this, we need to understand why sodium is necessary in our bodies. Sodium belongs to a group of minerals called electrolytes. While we often associate salt with sodium, there are several other minerals in this group that can form salts. In addition to sodium, we have chloride, potassium, magnesium, and other minerals such as calcium. These minerals are important for the electrical functioning of your body and give our cells their electric charge. We need this electric charge to function because our body is electric and produces energy thanks to this electric charge. Furthermore, this electric charge provided by electrolytes is essential for the electromagnetic balance of our body. Since all our cells have their polarity, they have a more positive side and a more negative side. Depriving yourself of mineral salts has negative consequences for your health. So negative, in fact, that often the deprivation of a mineral is more serious than its excess. For example, we always associate sodium excess with hypertension. But when blood flow to the kidneys decreases, our kidneys release a substance called renin to increase blood pressure, resulting in an increase in blood pressure. Paradoxically, this means that sodium restriction ends up causing the same problems it claims to solve. So what do? We need to understand that what we're looking for with regard to all minerals is balance. The key is balance with other minerals. The vast majority of the population studied for nutritional deficits showed a deficiency in potassium, a mineral whose intake is inversely proportional to blood pressure. This same potassium was consumed normally by our Paleolithic ancestors in doses 7 times higher than the current average dietary consumption. Therefore, you realize that we also have an imbalance between sodium and potassium consumption. This sodium-potassium balance is essential for a pump we have in all cells called the sodium-potassium pump. This pump essentially removes 3 sodium ions from inside your cell and lets 2 potassium ions enter, giving your cells a more negative charge compared to the fluid outside your cells. This process is necessary so that when you accumulate negative electric charge, you can then activate your cells, whether they're muscle cells, neurons, or whatever, to generate something called depolarization. Historically, we've all heard that consuming a high amount of sodium will lead to hypertension. Let's see what happens in ethnic groups with the highest sodium consumption per person. There's an ethnic group that consumes high amounts of salt, but their country ranks among the lowest in hypertension and cardiovascular pathology, South Korea. In Korea, the average sodium consumption is more than double the daily recommended amount set by the World Health Organization. However, excessive sodium consumption is not accompanied by an increase in hypertension or cardiovascular problems. There's no single explanation for this phenomenon, but first, we see that sodium in the diet doesn't come from refined table salt, but from the consumption of kimchi, fermented soybean paste, soy sauce, and even sea salt. Second, the typical Korean diet is rich in fermented foods, seaweed, and vegetables, and is also high in fish, making it richer in omega-3 than diets in other countries. Now, having one of the highest salt consumptions in the world, let's see where they rank on the list of cardiovascular diseases. Interestingly, even within this high sodium consuming ethnic group, the people with the highest sodium consumption are the ones who experience the least hypertension, coronary artery disease, and heart attacks. This information contradicts the global perception of sodium consumption, leading to what's called the sodium paradox. It's worth remembering that the longest living places on the planet have higher than average and higher than recommended sodium consumption. Sodium is necessary for many functions in your body, such as the proper production of thyroid hormone. However, an essential fact you need to know about sodium is that our thyroid gland needs sodium to produce thyroxine T4. Without sufficient sodium, iodine cannot enter your thyroid gland because the transport of a single iodine molecule into your gland requires 2 sodium molecules. Without this process, we won't form T3 and T4, which are thyroid hormones. Now that you understand why reducing your sodium intake is not a very good idea, why would you consume sodium? Besides preventing deficiency, sodium is needed to form strong bones, increase bone density, pump your blood, and increase the blood volume we can pump. This is especially important if you have poor circulation. Sodium is also needed to lower inflammation, improve digestion, increase your metabolism speed, and, above all, lower stress and cortisol levels. On the other hand, it's absolutely crucial for maintaining an electric charge in your cells, which is necessary for good cognitive functioning. This need for sodium for good cognitive functioning is so evident that when we perform a complex task or concentrate intensely, the dendrites or branches that our neurons use to communicate with each other increase the sodium concentration many times. Sodium is so necessary for our cognitive ability that many diseases that cause a deterioration of our cognitive ability, such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, damage the sodium-potassium pumps of our neurons. To sum up, a sodium deficiency will worsen our brain function and lead to fat accumulation, altered blood flow, poor sleep quality, and several other problems. Surprisingly, many studies indicate the risks of low sodium consumption and are published on reputable sites. Nutritional recommendations remain the same even after both the American and New England Journal of Medicine showed, in studies spanning more than a decade, that the higher the sodium consumption within reasonable amounts, below 7 grams per day, the lower the cardiovascular risk to a healthy, non-hypertensive person. So, what do I do with all this information? If I'm concerned about my cardiovascular risk level, I address my inflammation levels, oxidative fat levels, stress levels, and sympathetic activity. If I'm worried about my sodium consumption levels, I increase my potassium consumption to compensate. After watching this video, it's not about rushing to eat more salt, but it's about understanding 2 things. We underestimate the importance of minerals and the correct electric charge in our body to keep us healthy. Without this electric charge, neither our neurons nor our cells can function properly. Secondly, health rules are constantly changing, and we'll probably see changes in the coming decades regarding recommended salt consumption and sodium, just as we've seen in recent years regarding cholesterol. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to the channel because you'll receive videos like this every week on how to improve your quality of life.